This talk is about low-resource, high-impact modern NLP solutions for under-resourced languages. So we're going to talk today about low-resource languages, but why I am going to talk to you and who am I, because I didn't fully say who am I. And I am a data advocate at Toloka. I started as a machine learning engineer and I'm continuing. I really like studying, hard skills, and the knowledge of AI in general very much interests me. There is one problem: I really like to talk and I really like to meet people. So in IT society, it means that you're ending up being a data advocate or dev advocate profession. And here I am, and I'm enjoying it a lot. So over the past 3.5 years, I changed a lot of professions because I was trying to find myself, and I did that. But I managed to have pretty solid experience with crowdsourcing and working about it. So if you're going to be any time surprised or having any questions around it, I am the person to help. And my interests are natural language processing, it's ecom, it's search relevance, evaluation systems, and recommendation systems. So if you're like working in the sphere or something, I am especially happy to talk with you about, because I will have something to say. So what are we going to talk about today in my presentation, in my introductory presentation? So I have 3 main blocks that I really would love to share with you. Firstly, we'll start with the main subject of the day. What are we talking about? Like, what is low resource NLP? Because maybe somebody doesn't know it, or somebody wants to see how I taxonomize it for myself. Then I'm going to talk about one of the instruments that you can use in the low resource NLP to get more, to get it more forward, to get it more advanced. And I will try to give you some recommendations if you're developing a crowdsourcing solution, or if you're using a crowdsourcing, which points you should look at to make it high quality and useful. And the last one, I really want to talk about our initiative for low resource NLP development. It's voluntarily, it's about preserving and keeping the languages alive. So finally, without further ado, let's start. So what is low resource NLP? In the world, currently there exist more than 7,000 solved languages. And as you can imagine, and the ones that are covered in the modern AI, it's from 10 to 20. And why it was for me so interesting to actually prepare this talk for my visit here, because in India, as far as I know, there are a huge amount of languages which are being overlooked. There are a lot of dialects, and a lot of them are spoken but not digitalized at all. So even prevailing with English everywhere, which is taking up a hole in the internet, there are a big problem of preserving the culture, of preserving the languages, of keeping up, even because there are a big amount of people who are speaking these languages but can't use any products of the modern AI. So there is a problem. And this problem, yes, with low resource languages, that they are presented in the modern digitalization systems in the World Wide Web. If you look at our chart that we found and we collected, that as you can see, English language, it by 10 times far more presented online than other languages. And these languages on this chart, they are called high resource. And still you can see how vast is the difference. I would say, like, some people would assume that Chinese is also very well presented, but when we're talking about low resource languages, we're talking about the being able to get the solutions, being able to get data, access to data. Chinese internet is separate, so this language is actually even seems underrepresented here. So as you can see, there is like this amount of languages. You can see even the main ones that we're like knowing and talking about. And we know that now with large language models, which are being trained on the internet data and being so overpowering all the solutions and everything, we can understand that the problem of data sets and the biases of the amount of data being unbalanced is huge. So there are, of course, some main approaches how to solve this problem of low resource languages to preserve their culture. And low resource, as I repeated, doesn't mean that they are like endangered. It means that they are just not digitalized. And there are three approaches. First one, I would say like taxonomy can be different. This was built on my own taste. So if there are like natural linguists which are not agreeing with me much, I would really love to discuss you what is your taxonomy. From my perspective, these three approaches, they would start with a rule-based and text augmentation one. This one is based on the expert knowledge. So you have a linguist which can create some certain rules and can find a ways how language is built. And by this, he can build systems to make them more high resource. So here we're in the need of experts, and it's not always possible, you know. Second one is weak supervised and unsupervised learning. Here you don't need linguists, but you need data. It doesn't have to be labeled, there are several tasks in natural language processing, it's translation, it's entity recognition, etc., etc. They're required, for example, for building some systems, some labeling. But here you just need a huge chunks of unlabeled data mostly. And transfer learning, the hit of them all, I would say the most perspective from my point, the one that are all the BERTs, BARTs, and GPTs are built on. It is very good. It seems that it requires less amount of experts and less amount of data, but it does need human supervision, because when you're taking a big model learned on some chunks of tests, which can't be cleaned because the amount of text is big, you really need to check what is happening there. So I will begin firstly, it's very introductory talk. I am not giving any big insights in this part, but I just really want to show you, to give your interest, what can be the approaches. So the first one, rule-based, as you can see, it's like, there is a very simple example of the rule. Some languages, they are always, any languages, they have some structure. Like, for example, I'm learning German. I'm studying in Germany now, again. And always the verb, if it's not an Nebenzat, goes on the second place, which absolutely blows my mind, by the way. But this structure helps you to label languages, for example, do entity recognition with this knowledge without any additional data provided. Text augmentation comes from computer vision. Computer vision is very popular in the means that if you need more data, you can take your image, you can rotate it, clip it, make some random changes, maybe add some noise, boom, you have a bigger data set. Same you kind of can do with text. You can do synonym exchanges, you can do simplification of the sentences that you have, you can do some translation, back translation to another languages back and forth. So there are some ways to create more data, even though it will look kind of alike. The second approach, second block of approaches that I'm talking about is which requires not linguists, which are knowing the structure of the language. It requires more data. It's clustering. Clustering, I guess everybody can assume what it can be about. It's when the data of the similar semantics which are met in the same context, it will cluster with a good representation to the same basically place. So for example, we're talking about cities, Chandigarh and Delhi and Bangalore will end up in the same cluster. There is distance supervision, which requires usually some knowledge bases being somewhere. For example, Wikipedia, which is not that reliable, but still it's a great project. Some dictionaries. You can use this, and there are like some structures, some knowledge, some data, which you can somehow scrape off the internet and use in your solutions. But for that, you need a knowledge base, you know, and here comes the problem of digitalization. And the last one is the cross-lingual projection. It's when you're taking your task in the low resource language, you translate it to high resource, solve the task there, translate it back, boom, you have a solution. Here also the problem, you might need to have a translation system for that. And the last one, it's transfer learning. You have a big model. I mean, not specifically big model, I'm sorry. It's like Twitter was last half a year booming with big models that I'm now using this word everywhere. So you have a model which you trained on the available corpus of the high resource languages. They managed to learn some representation, some embeddings in some spaces, vector spaces. And then with a similar languages, it basically better works with the languages with a similar structure, because when they are different, it would work obviously worse. You can do some fine tuning, additionally learn the model on the like 100 to 200 examples. For example, this is the number taken from here, and then you will receive some decent result with your model. For example, it works with Turkish and Uyghur. However, there is a theory, like at least it was proven 3 years ago, which is in AI, it's a decade, because you know how fast everything develops now, that low to medium size, but specifically trained transformers, they are working much better in transfer learning than the big models. However, then we saw like the rise of these models, which everybody knows, ChatGPT. Who doesn't use ChatGPT? So here it like kind of comes the question, maybe they do solve the problem. This is the, I would say we will look, I mean, of course, I read the report of ChatGPT 3, 4, and we'll read about 5 when it comes. And I saw that they're supporting some low resource languages. I was interested. We decided to check it. I wouldn't say that it's like a super expert experiment, but just for fun. We checked firstly ChatGPT, how it works on different languages on high resource. We saw that it wasn't that consistent, but it's pretty obvious considering how imbalanced the internet is. So I believe that with the further training, with the further fine tuning and maybe prompt engineering, and it can be also some, you know, sufficient results. Also for fun, I decided when the ChatGPT, like GPT-4 dropped, I paid for it. I did an account and I checked even that on Russian language because I am Russian, so my mother tongue is Russian. And this is considered to be the high resource language. And you know what? It started hallucinating on the simple question. Does it mean something? No, it does not. But I was just going to say that there are still in the scientific society, the general theory that specifically trained, specifically supervised, human supervised models in the low resource languages, they work better than these big ones, or these big ones need human supervision, maybe with reinforcement learning with a human feedback, but mostly they just lack the data to train on. So here we have 2 things that we lack. We needed a domain expertise, not always the specific like doctor, engineer, university student, something, but at least we need a person who speaks and writes this low resource language, or just speaks at least something. And we need data, and we need data in a good quality. So since I have most of my experience in crowdsourcing, I would suggest you to give one of the solutions how to get data. And of course, it's not the only one instrument that you can use, and it's always the trade-off of ability to use the crowd, fight the crowd, find the money and everything. But one of the approaches to find the low resource languages and give the ability to annotate data can be. Why? Because mainly if you are decompose your tasks enough, you can give for the people who are providing the tasks, crowdsourcing workers, you can give them very simple tasks for which they don't have to learn. For example, just reading or writing, like, or just like, I don't know, giving a voiceover. And it's pretty easy, pretty scalable, not that expensive. And with that, you can preserve your low resource language. For example, what can you do with crowdsourcing? Because it's pretty flexible. You can just collect data, do the sentiment evaluation, because you just need to tell it, is this text good or bad? You can do the user intent determination, find what does he want to do. You can do some named entity recognition or like search relevance. I was talking about search relevance evaluation. It's only one of the ways to give the crowd to take, okay, if I type in jeans and I get the t-shirt, is it relevant or not? It can be transcription of the text, which also helps a lot because people can talk in the same low resource language, but have the different accent, different dialect. As again, I'm using Germany today, for example, not a big country, but my God, their accents, as I know from the Germans, they can't understand each other. I'm in Bavaria, and this is like a completely different word from, for example, Berlin. And also you can do vice versa. So from my perspective, what is important when you're using a crowdsourcing solution? There are 4 blocks that you need to take in the account to receive the quality data. Because the problem is with crowdsourcing in general, in machine learning, there are like generally 2. Firstly, it's not that interesting as go and play with the models, from my perspective, but it's sometimes from data-centric approach, it's very valuable. And the second one is you are not sure that the data would be somehow like quality. There will be some quality. Because there are like some random people, they're providing you some data, and then what? Maybe it's bad. So there are some mechanisms and some tips and tricks which you can use to ensure the quality. From our perspective, from my perspective, it's filtering. So you need to really know which crowd you're choosing, how to filter it based on the composition of your assignments, based on the task you're doing. Maybe there is slang, maybe there is something. You need to know region, you need to know culture. Second, it's about training the crowd. It's always here, you usually require the help of one expert. There should be a really decomposed tasks because people are learning also on a few short examples. You need to give them a variety of examples. You need to test like balanced classes of examples. You need to test that they really know the language and they really can provide the results. The most important part is the quality control. Of course, there are some basic things that checking frauding or something, but mainly there are like some mathematical models which allow you to aggregate simple answers in the very actually like from raw data to high level data. For example, if you're working with crowdsourcing, it's very easy to give them an assignment. What do you like more? This or this? Pairwise comparison. Or what do you find a better translation? Left or right? And they will just tell left or right. But there is a Bradley-Terry model which takes up these lefts or rights and aggregates them in an ordered list. So here you can, with some certainty, I'm sorry for this, figure of the speech, you can provide the result without giving them complex tasks. And the last, of course, just gathered it up. You need to have models. It's very good to use some supportive machine learning a little bit. You need to be very sure about anti-fraud. You need to always work with your crowd, look at the solutions, how they're working in the moment online, and get the feedback from them. And of course, you need to give them fair pricing, So I wanted to talk about the initiative for low resource NLP that we're doing in Toloka. It's voluntarily. It's about preserving the languages. And I am really sure that in the crowd are people that know some languages which are under-resourced in natural language processing. And it's important to preserve it for culture. So we're also a crowdsourcing platform. We have some experience in doing so. And our coverage is around 40 languages plus spoken. The problem is that it's basically still very far from 7,000, So we really care about the cultural preserving of the languages. So we started a researching initiative. We're very welcoming to linguistic experts to get the grants from us and start working on preserving the languages. We are finding the crowd around the world which are speaking these under-resourced languages, and we are developing data sets and natural language solutions, natural language processing solutions with us, with linguists, with this voluntarily work, to maybe also give them some, appearance in the world, to give them appearance on the conferences, and just to, keep them in the modern AI. So not to be the person who is speaking about something that we just started and we don't know how to proceed with it. We already did some certain voluntarily work with that. We did the first when we were on the machine learning translation conference in 2022 on the NLP. We were doing the evaluating quality of machine translation of the 14 African languages, which are low resource, not because not enough people speaks them, no, a huge amount of people speaks them in the world, but they're absolutely not digitalized. So we were finding the crowd, which in Africa, which was interested in that, which was interested in doing the crowdsourcing work. And we managed to provide some data sets on this workshop. So there are in the resources, there are papers from this workshop. So if you're interested, you can check them out. Also, to show you how in general it works. For example, here is the interface that we use for this initiative. There's one of the ways how you can do crowdsourcing tasks when you're doing the machine translation. Here I'm talking about exactly providing the crowd two options from which you can choose with the translation. It's a good practice and it works very well when the crowd has more simple tasks. And we built this pipeline which you can reuse, for example, somewhere in your solutions, if you're working with crowdsourcing or also preserving low resource languages. I don't want to take up much of your time on this pipeline, especially if you didn't like work with crowdsourcing yet. However, it will be in the slide, so you can look at it, you can like evaluate how it will be useful for your work. And also the second initiative that we did, it was with endangered languages, Yakut languages spoken in the North Siberia. Here we just tried to keep language intact to preserve it, because people speaking it just literally stop speaking it. You know how the languages die. So I am really, really encouraging you to participate in initiatives like this, just because it's really important. So to sum up what I was talking about today, what are we talking about, and we'll proceed. Firstly, low resource NLP still needs attention, even if we have really, really huge progress in a lot of fields. And I've heard a lot of words like, modern NLP is dead. I need to quit my PhD. My God, what I'm doing. No, you still have something to do, you know. The second one of the methods to use here, one not only, but one of the ones that we tried and it works, it's crowdsourcing. And we try to give you some tips how to use it. And finally, we are really committed to support the inclusion of the low resource languages in the modern NLP. So if you want, please come and let's talk about our research together. And I am leaving these references. I'm really thankful that you listened to me today. And I am really willing to receive some questions if there are any, one from you and one from the Zoom, and then we will welcome the next participant.
For the talk, awesome. This is Prasoon from Lab 45 Wipro. So in one of the slides, I saw that Tokai and Meta and in EM NLP 22, there are low resource languages from Africa, probably a bunch of them, and English was also there. So I was curious, was that a typo or was it misplaced below Chichino, or is it?
It wasn't a typo and misplaced. It was, I guess, my bad organization of the slide. So we used here as a translation of the targeted languages to make one of the techniques, the projection. We used translation between English and French. As you can see, French is also here to African languages. And also, I am not sure, but this is my actually point. I know that some languages, they are somehow the versions based on the geographical and political situation. They are versions of other languages with some, for example, I know that Afrikaans is somehow similar to Dutch, if I'm not wrong. So I am not sure, but I think that it somehow also was used maybe for annotators, which were mostly speaking, because usually for annotators, we require, not always, but for this task, we require them to speak high resource language and low resource language. So low resource are this African, high resource for English and French. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you very much for your attentiveness.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Continue the question. So there are different language families, right? Like Asiatic language families, and then there are African language families, which are totally different. So how do you guys do transfer learning over there? Because the language structure, as I understand, is very different. And do you also, because these all languages look to me like Congo African languages, do you also train amongst themselves, because all the resources are, we are having less resources? So do you do that?
So we managed through the years of our development get actually a very big coverage of crowd in African countries. So somehow we are able to gather data sets of enough volume to train models originally on them. So we're just having the people speaking these languages. We don't do transfer learning here.
Do you get some transfer learning between these two or no?
In this particular task, we were the one gathering data to perform the meta company to do the transfer learning. However, from my perspective, as a machine learning engineer in the past, and we are also doing machine learning models in our company on the top of the crowdsourcing. I would say that it would be a perfect and absolutely essential idea to do it, the transfer learning between the same family of the languages, as I was telling. It would be not very smart to do so with languages from the other family, for example, even English or French. So that we weren't doing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So are there?
We have a questions from
Okay,
Zoom.
only one, and
two.
we really need to give our next.
Yeah, we have 4 minutes for our next topic. And the first question is, how do you deal with dialects? And are they as separate or in the same language?
We're trying to distinguish with the crowdsourcing by filtering dialects too. And they are not considered the same language.
Okay, and one more question from Mike. How do you handle Pidgin languages like Pidgin language, Creole, and Patois?
Here, I personally can't answer this question. Please tell Mike to contact me in LinkedIn. I will do the personal research on our project on the African languages. I'll return with the answer.
Okay, so Mike, if you hear us, please reach out, Evgeniya.
Okay. I think that it will be perfect if I will ask everybody who has more questions, come to me on the break point, because I'm here for 1 hour, 15 minutes, and actually more. So you can always ask me even later. So please, any questions, if you're gonna stay, please come after, because I really wanna welcome our next speaker, who is a little bit tight in the time schedule.
That's true.
I am very sorry, guys, for stopping you with the knowledge flow, because I know that asking questions is funny. Please write them down. Please contact me. I will be very honored.